In the late 1800s, somewhere in the American interior, there was a town that quietly vanished. It appeared on early surveys, then disappeared from official charts almost overnight. No announcement. No explanation. Today, the town exists only in scattered mentions, as if it had been erased on purpose. The story begins in the United States during the 19th century, a time of expansion, surveying, and restless movement. Railroads were stretching westward. Rivers were mapped. Borders clarified. And every new settlement, no matter how small, marked itself on paper to prove that it existed. A name on a map meant trade, recognition, a future. Without it, a place could be forgotten before it ever truly began. The town that concerns us first appeared in county records around the mid-1800s. It was described simply as a roadside settlement near a junction of wagon trails. No grand founding ceremony. No famous benefactor. Just a cluster of wooden buildings and families searching for stability in a changing nation. There was a general store. A modest church. A single-room schoolhouse that, according to one ledger, opened only during the warmer months. Travelers wrote of a quiet place surrounded by open land and distant hills. Life there was ordinary. Children gathered water from the same well. Farmers watched the sky for signs of weather before every planting. Local news came slowly, carried by riders or worn newspapers passed from hand to hand. The town never attracted rushes of settlers. It never became a hub. Yet it survived, year after year, holding its ground in the wide American landscape. It appeared on early maps as a small dot. Sometimes labeled. Sometimes only implied by a cluster of lines. But it was there. Surveyors noted the location. County clerks filed references. Mail routes acknowledged the stop. These were not legends or rumors. They were administrative facts. And then, without clear warning, the references began to thin. Later maps omitted the town. Postal routes bypassed it. Some documents replaced the name with blank space, as though it had never existed. The land remained. The trails remained. But the printed record changed. For a small settlement in the 19th century, erasure from maps was not a trivial matter. Maps meant legitimacy. They confirmed that lives and labor belonged to a recognized community. When the name disappeared, the town began to vanish in practice as well. Travelers stopped arriving. Trade slowed. And slowly, the settlement that once expected to grow instead began to fade into the quiet margins of history. By the end of the century, only fragments of memory remained. A few references. A few family stories. A few ambiguous lines on outdated charts. Enough to confirm that the town had existed, but not enough to explain why it disappeared. The disappearance was not sudden in daily life. It happened gradually, like ink fading on a page. Residents began noticing small changes. Supply wagons grew less frequent. Surveyors stopped passing through. When travelers arrived, they carried maps that showed empty space where the town should have been. Some asked if they had wandered off course. Others simply continued on, doubtful that the settlement was official. Rumors spread quietly. Some believed that an administrative boundary had shifted, leaving the town in an uncertain legal space. Others suspected a dispute over land ownership. There were whispers of clerical mistakes that were never corrected. But there was also another feeling. A sense that someone, somewhere, had deliberately chosen omission. That the town had become inconvenient to recognize. Daily routines continued, but the future of the settlement became uncertain. Children who once planned to inherit farms now spoke of leaving. Store ledgers showed fewer transactions each season. Letters referencing the town were returned or redirected. It became difficult for residents to prove, even on paper, that they still belonged to an acknowledged place. The late 19th century in America was an era of progress measured in lines drawn across land. Railroads determined which towns thrived. Postal routes decided which names endured. Surveyors fixed the borders of counties and states. Amid this rush toward organization, a small settlement like this one could disappear not through violence or disaster, but through neglect and bureaucratic silence. Local leaders attempted to petition for reinstatement on the maps. At least one such request is hinted at in surviving notes. But the process moved slowly, if at all. Records became tangled between counties. Some documents were lost. Others were never filed. The name faded further. Families began to leave. Some sold their land. Others simply packed up and walked away. They resettled in nearby towns that had reliable recognition and clearer futures. Buildings remained for a time, standing empty. Field fences grew loose. Wooden signs weathered until letters washed away. By the time the 20th century approached, the town had been reduced to a memory kept alive only by those who once lived there. Without its name on official records, it ceased to function as a distinct place. It lingered briefly as a semi-ghost settlement, then even that faded. And still, no definitive reason has ever been confirmed. No fire. No epidemic. No war. Just quiet omission. A dot erased from every new map. The true culmination of this story is not a dramatic moment, but an administrative act. Somewhere, a decision was made. Or perhaps many small decisions. The result was the same: the town's name disappeared from official documentation. Once removed, it became increasingly difficult to restore. The greatest loss was not physical destruction. The land remained. The buildings remained for years. But identity depends on recognition. And when the written record erased the town, the people found themselves without a place to anchor their history. Legal confusion followed. Property records referenced locations that no longer existed on current maps. Letters addressing former residents returned undelivered. Newspapers that once printed small notices about births or harvests stopped mentioning the settlement altogether. Over time, the absence of the name became normal. Those who stayed the longest described, in later recollections, a growing sense of isolation. Travelers no longer believed the town existed. Officials questioned its legitimacy. Children left to seek documented futures elsewhere. With every departure, the community weakened. Eventually, the remaining families dispersed. Their stories drifted into other towns, carried as fragments rather than official accounts. The original settlement dissolved into farmland and open ground. Buildings collapsed or were dismantled. Nature reclaimed what remained. The erasure was complete when, decades later, few people could even agree on the precise location. Old maps conflicted. Notes contradicted each other. Survey markers disappeared. The town had not simply been abandoned. It had been administratively erased to the point that history itself struggled to remember it. This was the final transformation, a real place converted into uncertainty. A settlement reduced to a rumor of itself. Today, the town has no voice. Its name is rarely spoken. Most records do not mention it. The land remains, but the place is gone. There are fields here now. Open space. Grass moving in the wind. A few scattered stones lie in the dirt. They might once have been part of a wall. Or a foundation. There is no way to be certain. No sign marks the site. There is no wooden board with a name. No metal plate on a post. Travelers pass without stopping. They do not know they are passing through a vanished town. To them, this is only empty countryside. Just another piece of land in a wide country. The roads changed long ago. Old wagon tracks faded into the ground. New routes formed elsewhere. Carriages stopped coming. Mail stopped arriving. The world outside forgot to look in this direction. People once lived here. They built homes. They worked the soil. They raised children. They waited for the town to grow. They expected it to remain. But the maps changed first. Paper decided their fate. When the town disappeared from records, life here became uncertain. Ownership became unclear. Boundaries blurred. Officials questioned what once seemed obvious. The place no longer had a recognized name. And slowly, people left. One family departed. Then another. Then the next. They packed what they could carry. They took their memories with them. They left the buildings behind. They walked away from a town the world refused to acknowledge. The school closed. The church stood empty. The store doors stayed shut. Wind blew dust along the road. Boards loosened. Roofs sagged. Windows broke. Rain entered the rooms. Seasons passed quietly over the ruins. There were no headlines. No official statements. No final photograph capturing the last day. The end came slowly. So slowly that no one could point to the exact moment the town ceased to exist. Children who once played here grew old somewhere else. Some remembered the town. Some spoke of it only rarely. Others stopped speaking of it at all. With every passing year, details faded. The names slipped from conversation. Memories softened. Then disappeared. Today, the land gives no answers. Birds cross the sky above it. Clouds drift overhead. The wind moves through the grass. There is no noise except what nature makes. Silence covers everything. There are no streets. No fences. No markers. Only open space. If you walked across it, you might not notice anything unusual. You might think nothing had ever been here. But there was a town. It stood on this ground. People believed it would last. They believed they belonged to a place. Then the maps erased it. Paper forgot first. History followed. There is no memorial. No archive with a complete record. Only fragments remain. A line in an old ledger. A feint on an early chart. A sentence in a diary. Small traces of a life once lived. The town exists now as absence. It survives only in uncertainty. It stands nowhere. Except in the story of a place erased from every map. And the land is quiet again. Completely quiet. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.